There's a drink that's only sold in Albania called Fanta Exotique, and it is my favorite pop in the whole world. I told a friend this week that trying to pick out my favorite Bible passage is like having somebody pour me a big glass of Fanta Exotic and then telling me to pick out the one drop that tastes the best. It's nearly impossible. So I thought and I thought about what I wanted to talk about this week. And then Monday, after 2 very, very long weeks and a really long day on Monday, I was sitting at my son's soccer game and I thought, we're just going to go home tonight and eat leftovers and just be done. My husband said something about pizza, and I felt the Holy Spirit, crazy as it sounds, prompt me and say, you have a coupon for Marco's, use it. Well, after arguing with him for a little while and reminding him that I was really tired and needed rest, I finally said, I'm going to go to Marco's and get dinner. So while my youngest son and I were waiting for our order, we struck up a conversation with a retired black gentleman. We talked about the gospel, we talked about church, and Jesus' top 2 commandments to love God and love other people. And then we moved into that uncomfortable area of the categories that we put people in, the division and disunity and hurt that causes. And it could have been a really uncomfortable conversation between a black man and a white woman, but it was so full of grace and love and kindness. And when we got done talking, I was able to invite him to join me at church. That conversation reminded me, as I was driving home, I was thinking about one of my favorite passages in Mark 6, which Jesus often uses to remind me that despite what I think I need or how I feel in the moment, he knows what I really need. And all I need to do is trust him. In Mark 6, it starts out where Jesus is rejected by the people who should have known him best, his friends, his family, the people in his hometown. Then he sends out his disciples 2 by 2 on their first mission trip, and while they're gone, his cousin and best friend, John the Baptist, was beheaded by King Herod. So Jesus is grieving, and all of his disciples come back from their trips, and they are excited and frustrated and all of these things that we're feeling when we come back from an opportunity to share the gospel where we are either accepted or rejected or sometimes a little bit of both, and maybe even misunderstood. So they're all trying to kind of download about their experiences, and verse 31 says that there were so many people that they couldn't even eat. So Jesus looks at his disciples and says, come away with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. Yes, rest. This is what we need, time alone with Jesus. So they get in the boat and they cross the lake, and when they get to the other side, they realize that all of these people had run around the lake and gotten there before them. And Jesus, being Jesus, gets out of the boat and has compassion on them. And it says that he taught them many things. They get to late in the day, it's dinner time, and the disciples by now are pretty frustrated because they've been promised rest and time with Jesus, and that has not happened yet. So they look at Jesus and they say, hey Jesus, it's supper time. Why don't we send these people out into the cities and towns and let them get something to eat? And Jesus looks at them and he says, you feed them. What do you mean feed them? There's 5,000 men plus women and children. We're looking at 7,000 people. That's 8 months' wages plus some, and we don't have anything. Jesus says, what do you have? So they look around and they have 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Jesus says, feed them. So they start passing out food, and they pass out food, and it just never runs out until everyone's fed, and there's 12 basketfuls of leftovers sitting there. Jesus offered the disciples rest, but he knew that they needed something else even more. He knew that they needed to learn to die to self, that ministry was going to happen and needs were going to be in front of them regardless of how they felt or what they wanted at the time. He also wanted them to know that he only expects us to use what we have and trust him with the rest. The results of ministry are up to Jesus, not us. We're not responsible for that. And when we give everything we have, regardless of how we feel physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, and all of our resources are at his disposal, small as they are sometimes, He will show up in glory and multiply the blessings. The Lord knew that I was tired and grieving and hungry and really irritable on Monday. But he also knew that there was a man at Marco's who had a really messed up view of God and his church, and he was in the mood to talk. All I had to do was show up, and he took care of the rest. He moved the conversation from shallow, which we started talking about golf, to deep and back out again in such a way that it was positive and God-honoring. He also knew that my son, who has two friends at school, one who's an atheist and one who's a Jehovah's Witness, needed to see a living example of taking everyday conversation and turning it to the things of God. Jesus knows what we need, and he knows the needs that are deeper than what we need. He may call you into rest, but he also knows when you need to stop and minister along the way. Sometimes we just need to be reminded that it is not about me. He knows what you need. Trust him to meet those needs. And take some time to look around and see that maybe what you are rejecting or resenting is exactly what you need in the moment. Trust him.